You're listening to In Coaching, your backstage pass into the world of coaching. I'm your host, Ioana Jongsma, a Gestalt and neuromindfulness coach with a love for stories. I'm delighted to run this first season of the In Coaching podcast in partnership with the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, where I graduated from my GPCC in May 2024. If you're considering becoming a coach, or you are a coach already and you're looking to upgrade your skills, the folks at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland would be happy to chat with you. You can explore what the Gestalt methodologies offer coaches, how they relate to the ICF requirements and certifications, and what would be expected of you throughout the Gestalt Coach Certification Program. My guest today is Andy Powell. Andy is the founder and chief firestarter of Rule 6 Consulting, an executive and team coaching practice, which includes OD consulting and change management. His career spans over 25 years with international Fortune 100 companies in senior OD roles before starting his own coaching and consulting practice 12 years ago. Andy's clients range from biotech startups to Fortune 50 organizations and not-for-profits. He is an ICF certified advanced team coach and professional executive coach, a certified Gestalt coach, and a master certified 16 conditions practitioner. I had the pleasure of learning from Andy during the coaching certification program at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, where he's part of the senior faculty. And in addition to the Gestalt ICF program, Andy also teaches working with groups and teams and the art and science of team coaching, both programs offered by the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. And what I didn't know before this podcast is that Andy is an avid cyclist and enjoys competitive sports. And he's also a messy wannabe chef. A mixed blessing, he says, to those for whom he cooks. Andy, welcome to In Coaching.
Hi, Ioana. Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah.
So if you have guests at your house, what would be the messy thing to cook?
Oh gosh. Either it would be something that I spend the whole day preparing, where I'm making my own pasta and stock and everything else, and dirtying every bowl in the place.
Love it.
That would be it. Other than that, it might be something Thai dish where I have to have a lot of different little bits and pieces and mini bowls to add things in as we go along. So
get your bowls ready. I'm coming. Sound good. So Andy, you've been working with groups for over 30 years. What's the difference between a team coach and other types of team facilitators?
Well, what I'd say is there's a big umbrella of roles that work with teams and team learning and team development. And all of them are necessary and important roles. And team coaching is one of those. And it's, in my mind, it's actually a combination of some of them. But what really differentiates, I think, why we would call out team coach is that a team coach is someone who works with a team in a deeper relationship over time. So that it's not a one-off, take the team one day here or a 3-day thing there, and that's the end of the work. A team coach is one who stays connected to the team in the work of the team over a period of time. And a team coach may do, some of those other things, may need to do a little training session, or if the team wants to do something like DISC or Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders. We may also do team launch, if it's a new team and they need to do a charter and team purpose and roles and responsibilities, that's all work that we do. And we go beyond we go beyond that. So, one of the things you may talk about in a team launch are team norms, behaviors, agreements on how we're going to work together. And that may be something that if you stop there, it's a great thing that goes into a picture of their flip chart or their two norms, or it becomes a sticky on their computer about, agreements and behaviors. But when a team coach is someone who then is with the team while it's doing its work later on, maybe highlighting to the team, hey, I noticed this happening. And you said before this is a norm that you want to establish, and what I'm noticing, do you feel that's consistent with the norm, or do you want to talk about that norm again? It's really how do you pull that through over time, and I think that's also why the relationship of the coach with the team over time is to keep pulling on those threads of things that they may have learned during a team building session, but now how is it showing up today and in this meeting, in this budget meeting, in this other session, and how are
Or how
you,
is it not showing up?
or how is it not showing up exactly? So it's a little bit more of that pulling through, ensuring the stickiness of the learning. And so it's a different kind of a relationship with the team than maybe some of the other hats. But it means, but we do need to know how to do all those things.
Right. So how would a team decide which of these services they need?
Well, I think to be really clear on what it is they want. If you say my team is not functioning ideally, we don't have good behavior around challenging issues, and conflict is either non-existent or it's too much. That's not a one-day course on trust, for example. So I think as a consultant coming in, you want to be really clear about what you can offer, really meeting what the team says they need. And so from a team perspective, it's being really clear, do I want to learn this particular, do this DISC assessment because it's an interesting way to look at how we communicate with each other, and how each of us makes decisions and what's important for us and how we make decisions. The rest of the organization may be going through that, and we need to get on board with that so we know the language. If you have a meeting where maybe as a team leader, you might normally facilitate, but on this particular meeting, you really want to get in and have conversation. Well, that's when you'd bring in a facilitator, so you can kind of let go of that responsibility, and somebody else will keep us on agenda and keep us on track and make sure everybody's participating. If you got a brand new team and you want to get a team launch, you can bring someone in, whether it's a day long or 3 day long, team launch where you do all those things I mentioned, charters and norms and things like that. So, understanding what each of the different roles does. And I would say that most people who work with teams, being a trainer, being a facilitator, doing team launches, those are things that most of us are all familiar with. The differentiation is if you want a team coach and you want this ongoing role that is really helping the team pull through and change its behavior over time, then you need someone who is able to bring in that skill set in addition to the others.
As you were describing all of these roles, what came to my mind was teams that I've observed over time. I see a big difference between teams who come together around a specific project with a beginning and an end, and teams who don't have that, but rather have more projects with beginnings and ends, but the team itself remains the same over years, even decades, sometimes in some organizations, with, of course, people coming and going, but overall the team is the same. So I wonder if you work differently with those sorts of teams.
Yeah. So the first type of team you talked about, where they've got a project, or maybe it's an agile team or a scrum team, or it's just a special project team.
For example, yeah.
Those teams are often real clear about what they're there to do, and they got a pretty clear deliverable in terms of what the end product looks like. And yeah, so the work there is often about how do they do that work? What are their ways of working together, and what do they need to be able to do? And maybe helping clarify things around roles and responsibilities and decision-making authority and things like that. But you're able to kind of dive in a little bit more quickly. With the other teams, and I'll use an executive team as an example, is not all teams are teams. Some of them are meetings, and it's not a team unless the team has a specific work and only it can do. For example, a quote senior leadership team that meets on a monthly basis and does regular functional area updates where marketing weighs in and sales and manufacturing and so forth does their updates. It's an information exchange meeting. It's not a team unless there's specific work that they have to do together. And that might be things like, deciding budget allocation across different departments based on project needs and things like that, where they have that ultimate decision making. So those groups are actually sometimes they're more difficult to work with because they're oftentimes not clear on, well, what's our work? And are we even a team? And what I have found is that many times what you'll see a quote, a senior leadership team that's like 10 or 12 people. And it's representative from every major function. You see, you've got legal and HR and safety and marketing and manufacturing and risk management and so forth, all sitting in the room. But if I sit down and talk with the president or the CEO or the leader of that organization and say, what's the work that needs to happen at the executive level? Oftentimes it's work that really only involves 3 or 4 of those folks. And so sometimes I find my work when I go into an organization is in fact, I had one not that long ago where they had 13 people on their quote senior leadership team. And first I was trying to explain, well, that's not really a team, and realized that was kind of a non-starter. Everybody wants to be part of a team. So I said, that's fine. That's your senior executive team. We came up with also something called the core team. And the core team was the CEO and 4 or 5 functional heads. And they actually made the decisions on strategy and budget and so forth. And they could do that in a smaller group because they were with 13 people and everybody feeling like they needed to say something and being expected to say something. They really got caught up and spent more time updating, and then they would have a half hour to talk about a major decision. Now they had a group where they could really spend, an hour, 2 hours really wrestling with one particular issue.
And you were able to get to that just from acknowledging what is a team and what isn't, and getting them on board, of course.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it sounds simple, but it took a while. It took a little bit of a
Sure.
to get to that point because there was a lot of ego stuff involved with that decision and who was in the core team and who wasn't, and all those kinds of things that are not unusual in organizations. So it took a little time to get to that.
Yeah. What about departments who may not be a team? Do you run into that?
Yeah, I think there may be groups that want to do something to kind of enhance their groupness, if you will, but they're not really interdependent. And so there's things that you can do about that, but I need to be really clear about, is this really a team or not a team? And that then informs my work. And so I may do work with clients where I work with what they're calling a team, but I'm pretty clear about what we're going to do and what do they really need from that perspective. Yeah.
So what would be your definition of a team?
A team would be a group of individuals, 3 or more, who have a shared purpose that are interdependent. So they have a clear shared purpose and goal and concrete goal of what they have to do. They have clear work that they need to do, and it's work that they can only do together. So they have to be interdependent. And if those 3 things are in place, you've got the essence of a team. But if you're missing any one of those, you may have a group that's interdependent, but they're not clear on what they're there to do or what their deliverable is.
So hear that, folks? Shared purpose, interdependent, and a minimum of 3.
Yeah.
Those are the key ingredients of having a team.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. You have been involved in validating the ICF team coaching competencies and their certification. What was that process like for you?
It was hard. There was quite a challenge in that. I was part of the pilot group. So the first people that were being considered for this certification. And so ICF was testing out its requirements to see, how many people actually will get through the gauntlet of the things that we've asked them to demonstrate and to show. And it was really great learning experience. It was well worth the effort. And I think the requirements haven't changed a whole lot now from what that first pilot group was like. For me, what it did is it validated things that I was doing, and I wasn't sure because this is still fairly early. The concept of a team coach and what it is and isn't, to that first question you asked me.
Yeah. What made you want to become a team coach?
I would say two things, and one's from a long time ago, and one was very recent. Very early in my career, when I was working at Exxon, I was working in training in OD, and I had a chance to work with self-directed work teams and quality circles and Baldrige Award things, and just a whole bunch of team-related stuff. And then also we would bring executives into the learning center, and they would run meetings, and we would bring in really high-powered facilitators, and some of us would sit in and be kind of staff for this, guru that was coming in to facilitate the groups. And over that time, there were a couple of people that came through that were facilitating these meetings that they saw things happening in the room and addressed things happening in the room that I was oblivious to, had no awareness that dynamic was at play in the room in terms of issues between subgroups on the team or individuals on the team or conflict with the leader of the team. And in both of those cases, when I was asking them, like, what were you doing? What were you seeing? Where did you learn how to do this? They both mentioned the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland and a program they had gone through about working with groups, that was working with groups and teams. And so part of me at that time says, I want to be able to do what they do. I want to be able to work with a group and facilitate a group, and be able to have that kind of a relationship with the team. And these were, some of the people on these teams were old oil field chemical engineers from Texas and Louisiana. These were really hard-boiled, no-nonsense business engineering science guys. And they would have them doing things as a group that I never would have expected you could do with them. And so that was what first piqued my interest in working with groups and doing that kind of work. Fast forward until just a handful of years ago, I was working with a CEO and most of his direct reports doing one-on-one coaching. And we were working on dynamics and candor and courage that they would have with each other when they got together, but I was working with them each one-on-one. And one day the CEO said, hey, I got a staff meeting this afternoon. Would you like to sit in on the staff meeting and see what's going on? And I said, sure. Then I get to kind of see, okay, what's all this stuff that these guys are talking about? And I was sitting in the room and they were having a discussion about some strategic issue. And the president wanted to get everybody's input and get people to advocate for different points of view on this strategy. And about halfway through it, the CEO asked a couple of questions and then made a statement. And everybody just went silent. And they had up to that point been kind of leaning forward in their chairs, engaged in the conversation. And when the president said this, they all just kind of sat back and I saw their shoulders drop a little bit. And without having discussed whether I had permission to do this or not, I was there to observe. I interrupted and I just said, it just felt like the air just left the room. What's going on? And there was like 30 seconds of just dead air, where people were like, what's this all about? And then finally, one person took the courage to say, well, I had a thought, but it sounded like the conversation was being shut down. And then they had this just dialogue about, okay, this is what I thought, this is how I experienced it, this is what I meant to do, this is what I was trying to do. And after the meeting, the president came up to me and he says, that's the best meeting we've had in 3 years. And that was like, click. That's what I want to do is, in a matter of minutes, literally less than 30 minutes, the team had probably one of its best learning experiences on things that I have been working with them on one-on-one for many hours over a period of many months. So that was the pivotal moment for me. Yeah.
Talk about a system level effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Going from the individual to the group. Yeah. And the subgroups within it.
What's your favorite thing about team coaching compared to individual coaching?
I love the challenge because you really have to be on your toes, really attentive the whole time because there's so much happening in a group or a team. And there's something for me that's kind of like, it's not adrenaline, but it's an engagement that I feel that I get kind of drawn into that energy. So there's a richness, there's a dynamics, an element of the unknown, and the other is it's immediate. It's happening right here now when you're working with a group or a team in the way that coaches do, and what you do can have immediate impact. If I'm working one-on-one, we're talking about something that the client is going to do later and try out, and then you come back 2 weeks, a month later, and say, how did that go? What did you learn? What worked for you? What didn't? What was that experience like? Here, when you're working with the team, you really are working in the here and now, and so you can have that kind of immediacy of seeing the impact of the work and the learning of the team.
Mm-hmm. So really not role play, but real play.
Role play, exactly. Yeah.
In session. I'm curious what your clients are working on. What kind of challenges are they bringing into your sessions at the moment?
For the most part, they're the same things that teams and groups have been bringing in for many, many years. I'd say that right now, one of the bigger issues that is somewhat unique is communication, poor communication, because of the nature of the different kinds of communication channels that people are using now. We're much more reliant upon text, messaging, email, and video conference, which provides kind of a safe space sometimes for people to say things they may not otherwise say. It also reduces the fidelity of the message so that often things get misinterpreted or misunderstood, and the nuance that you get from live one-on-one interaction is lost. And so there's more of that now because post-COVID, there's so many different meetings and interactions, and teams are working virtually, and they're working even, in kind of text environments. So that's probably one of the biggest things is how do we communicate with each other, and how do we make sure that the important messages are getting heard clearly. I would also say lack of what I call healthy differentiation. It's another word for conflict, but not conflict. It's like when I feel I have a different point of view, I have a different take, I have a different perspective. And sometimes that may bump up against somebody else's, and it may feel like a bit of a challenge. So it's that fear of risk taking, teams and groups not feeling they have the trust and the safe space to be able to have those kinds of conversations. And so you're having a lack of that. Structurally, I think the other things that are most important that seem really subtle is lack of clear team purpose. A lot of teams don't really know exactly what it is they're being asked to do. Everybody's got a thought about what they think it is, but oftentimes I find with teams that are struggling, as you start to peel back and you ask each person, you talk about, so what's the work of this team? What is it that you're being asked to do that can't be done in any other format? You can't be done by individuals or another team. What's this? And I get 7 people, you get 7 different answers. That happens a lot more often than you might think. And also then lack of clarity on people's roles within the team. Why am I here? What do I have the authority to do? What do I have permission to do or not do? A lot of times it's a lot of ambiguity. And so a fair amount of my work is really very fundamental work about what's the purpose of the team? Who's on the team? Why are they on the team? How do you get some of your work done? And that's not some of that catalyst stuff I talked about before. That's some kind of basic things. So, as a team coach, you have
Can't
to
go without it.
Right. So as a team coach, you have to be able to do all those things. You do have to be a good facilitator and a trainer and advisor, in addition to being able to play the catalyst role. I'd say the other one that jumps out at me is poor team design in the first place. I'll give you an example of one, and when I think about team and team design, there's the team, and there's also the team that's not in the room, the stakeholders that are outside of the team, and that's all stuff that I think needs to be thought about as you're creating the team. And the one example I have is I was working with a cross-functional team of people from different departments that normally were kind of adversarial, like this department needed to get something approved by that department. in order for it to go forward. And there was this series of checks and balances and kind of regulatory and compliance teams and groups in the pharma industry. And so the thinking was, well, if we create a cross-functional team with people from each of those groups and have them begin working together, we'll be able to have them work collaboratively. So we're not doing this adversarial thing, but we're kind of moving together, which is a great idea. Made a lot of sense.
On paper.
On paper, right. In reality, what they forgot to do was they didn't have the same alignment around the managers of the people on the team. So the people on the team were fully committed and excited about being able to get out of this adversarial thing, but the managers of those functions didn't trust the other functions. And so they kept overriding and managing the people on the team. Like, you just agreed to something, you can't agree to that because X, Y, Z. And so I came back to the client and said, my work probably isn't with this team, it's with this other group. Those are examples of the kinds of things where when you're designing and setting up the team, you need to think through and have someone that works with you. So you think through all of those kinds of implications as you're creating and setting and building a team.
Do you see these trends continuing over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. I think as long as there are teams, there will be these issues. As we get smarter about it, I think hopefully we see less. But if we can do the work at the very beginning of the creation of the team so that they get a good foundation, then a lot of these other pieces get addressed, and the work of a coach then becomes much clearer in terms of really optimizing the team performance, as opposed to coming in after there's maybe some fracture and trying to bring the team back. I think the wild card right now is the wild card for everybody and everything, and that's AI. I think because certain roles that are on teams now could be done by AI. People on teams will be using AI to prepare themselves for their work and their teams. And so the challenge is going to be figuring out where are those areas where it's safe to be able to really leverage that technology, and where are areas where, because of security issues, because of some human factor issues, that you need to be careful about. I am far from an expert on it, but I think that has some potentially huge implications, that we're going to be in just a really steep learning curve, over the next 5 to 10 years, probably faster than that. Yeah.
Do you think team leaders can make good coaches for their own teams?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do they need in order to be good coaches?
Well, I think they need to know some of the things that we've just talked about. I mean, they do need to understand team dynamics, stages of growth of teams, need to have really clear skills in how you set up a team in the first place. I would point to the work of Ruth Wagaman and Richard Hackman and the 6 team conditions. If I was coaching a leader on how to be an effective team coach, one of the first things I would do is have them learn about the 6 team conditions, because that's all about how do you set up and design a team well in the first place. That should alleviate a lot of the issues that may come up down the road. So that'd be one of the things. And then have some comfort with being able to then step out of the team leader role and be in the coach role. So to be a bit of a chameleon and be able to separate those two. So having some clear sense of, what role do I need to play, or I want to play with the team today or in this meeting. Be able to be clear about that, and be able to maintain that sense of what's the relationship I have with the team now. But ideally, you want not only the team leader, but even members of the team to be able to then be coaches. I mean, ultimately, if a team coach does their job well, the team is going to be able to coach itself and be able to step back and look at its process and say, hey, wait a second, what have we been doing for the last hour? And is that really how we said we wanted to get things done? And so a really, high EQ, IQ, SQ team is one that's going to be able to stop and reflect on itself. And so the job of a team coach is to build that capability through the work we do with the team, modeling the behavior that they eventually will take on.
I'm hearing a lot of focus on agreements, the agreements that a team can make, and sticking to them or defining agreements if necessary. And I recognize that from a lot of different types of teams I've worked with in, different capacities. And I can really see that when a team is not working so well together, it's not so easy for them to even make agreements, much less stick to them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very true, and that goes back to, yeah, like you say, those fundamental things of being clear up front. What are the agreements we need to have? What role do I play? Why are we even here? I've often find when I come in to a team where they're saying we've got an issue with, we don't have healthy conflict. People don't feel psychologically safe to express opinions. To me, it's like treating the symptom and not the cause. And so it's being able to diagnose and pull back and say, okay, so what's leading to that behavior, rather than going off site for 3 days and talk about why trust is so important and psychological safety is so important. That's not unhelpful, but it may not be getting at the genesis of why they're wrestling with that in the first place. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not unhelpful, but it's not news either.
Right.
Right? We all know that trust is important.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's a lesson that you learned from a team that you worked with that you'd like to share?
Is trust the team to know what it needs at any given point in time. That at some level the team may know better than you what it needs. The example that comes to mind for me was a client I was working with. We had a 3-day agenda to work through a number of things. It was a pretty tight agenda. We'd spent a lot of time on it to get the right mix of all the stuff that I talked about earlier. And just prior to the meeting, like a few days before the meeting, one of the team members had been terminated. And it also happened that the person who was terminated was the only woman on the team, and not the only diverse member of the team, but one of them. So we came in starting with the agenda, and at one point, one of the members of the team who was pretty close to the person that was fired just stopped and said, well, we got to talk about this. What happened? How did we fail this person? Because we all kind of knew that there were some issues there and some trouble there, but did any one of us do anything to try to help or to intervene? And if we can't do that, who are we as a team? And I thought, yeah, agenda out the window. That's what the team needed to work on right now. And we spent the bulk of the day working through that. There was a part of me that was like, oh, we've got this whole design. And how are we going to make up? And it was like, I'm not going to worry about that. This is what the team needs to do right now. And so I've learned that in other situations where, you sometimes let the team go. You want to intervene, but it's important for them to struggle and to figure things out on their own. And so for me, that was a big affirmation and a learning of trust the process and trust the team to address what it really needs to.
What helped you to make that decision in the moment?
I think it was following the energy. Is you don't want to work uphill. And anything else I would have done would have been pushing against the energy in the room. As a Gestalt trained person, we were very much focused on energy and flow. And so I didn't know where the conversation was going to go. We had no plan or design or structure or agenda on how to deal with it. So it was really co-creating with them at that moment. So how are we going to have this conversation? And what do we want? How do we want to engage at this? And kind of side contracting with the team leader, through kind of sideways glances, because the team leader was one that would probably more likely want to stay on task because it was also their decision to terminate the person. And so there was a little bit of risk for them in that. And so we navigated our way through it. We needed to take a couple of extra breaks, in the morning just for me to touch base on people and kind of check in. But at the end of the day, it just trust it and follow the energy.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I'll never jump out of an airplane. I'm not going to do any bungee jumping. My equivalent is doing that with teams. Is sometimes you take a leap, you take a step, you don't know where you're going to end up, but you follow some intuition that says, I think there's something fruitful here. Let's go and find out. And sometimes it works out really well.
What would you advise someone who is either starting out as a team coach or has been a coach for a while and wants to add team coaching to their services?
What I would say is do an inventory of your existing skill set and your existing experience because you probably have a lot more to draw upon than you think you do. If you've been facilitating and working in organizations and systems as some sort of a coach, OD consultant. So one is really think about what you already have. There's two sets of skills that we've touched on: structural stuff and emergent stuff. And the structural is know some basic models of how to diagnose where a team is in its evolution, some sort of a team diagnostic model. Be aware of the concept of levels of system. There's things happening in a group that's happening at the intrapersonal level, inter, subgroup, group level. Get familiar with what that is. Know about team launches and agreements and charters and all those things. Those are all things that are important for teams when they start out. So have all of that structural stuff and the ability to work with the team through that. And the other is then develop this emergent skill, this ability to facilitate and intervene in the moment with what's happening in the group. And not facilitate from the sense of making sure everybody's got their voice in the room or that we're sticking to the agenda. I'm talking about another level of facilitation, which is more of an awareness agent, if you will, to be a mirror to intervene in the work of the team. And I think that
saying things like, the air just left the room, what happened?
exactly. I had another case where, there were conflict always got worked out. The individual members of the team never would challenge each other. So the CEO became kind of like the hub of the spoke, and everything kind of came through them. We talked about that dynamic, and they understood it, they saw it, but the behavior continued. And in one meeting, I noticed, and I actually have been with the group for a while. The conflict was between the VP of marketing, the VP of sales. I actually brought them into the center of the room in a fishbowl and had them have the conversation. Okay, we all know what the issue is. You've all been talking about it. Let's have it now. And being able to have the confidence to be able to do that and know how to do that in a way that is pushing the boundaries of the team's comfort, but it's not unsafe. And I think finding some place where you learn those kinds of skills, the Gestalt Institute is one. There'll probably others out there, but developing that emergent intervention, working in real time with the team, build those two buckets.
I'm curious how much you mediate in a situation like that. Like, you bring the two people in the center of the room, and then do you let them kind of figure their way out, or do you at some point do a stop action? What's happening for you? What's happening for you?
Right. Exactly. And it's the latter. It's not completely unstructured, but it's really working in that way. Just small little tweaks. So what was it like to hear that? What's happening for you when you say that? What is it? What's your impulse now? What's your instinct? Then let it go for a while, and then check back in. And at some point in time, I may need to put in, okay, here's another little kind of ground rule for how this conversation will proceed if it gets a little bit too tense. So it's watching watching this discussion and listening intently and tracking all the things that are happening, both at the physical level, the emotional level, the energetic level, and the language level. And is this growthful? Are they learning from this conversation? And then how can I heighten that? Are there opportunities where I can stop it and say, let's heighten, okay, what just happened? So step out of the conversation, pay attention to what's going on. Now let's go back in.
Yeah. What a wonderful word, growthful.
Yeah.
So if there were a closing line that you would like to leave our listeners with, what would that be?
two things pop to mind. One is trust yourself, trust your intuition, and be willing to take some well-considered risks in knowing that you're not going to be perfect. I think the other is the importance of the relationship with the client. That to be able to do this kind of work requires that you've got a level of relationship that's, I think, to me, feels different. Just textually, it feels like a different kind of a relationship, where I'm not the expert or the consultant or the trainer coming in the room, but I'm really kind of an extension of the team. I am part of the system when I'm there. And so there's a level of relationship that you have with the team and individual members of the team that goes beyond the relationship you might have in other group development activities. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, good question. To think about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm really appreciative of everything you shared, Andy. Thank you so much.
Really, really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.